Welcome to SARE Nutritional Therapy. I'm your host, TL Matthew. I'm the founder of Some Foods, the maker of Some Sweet, and also a nutritional therapist. On this broadcast, we talk about health news and information as it applies to your everyday life. Go ahead and give us a thumbs up if you like this kind of content. Yes, that means like the video. And we want to hear from you. So comment if you have something that you want to share with us. And subscribe to all of our social medias. And now, on to the broadcast. Well, hello. Hello. I don't know if you all can see me. I am trying to make this thing come up. Let me introduce myself. I'm Teresa T.L. Matthew. I'm the founder of Some Foods, the maker of Some Sweet. And I am also a nutritional therapist. The name of this broadcast is SARE, which stands for Sugar Addiction is Real. So as you can see from the title of this program today, we're talking about fat versus sugar. I'm going to tell you that I'm a recovering sugar addict, and what I use to help me overcome my sugar addiction, if it's going to allow me to change, to swap screen here really quickly and share that with you, this is what I use to help me to overcome my sugar addiction. It's the sweetener that I make. It's called Some Sweet. That is the sweetener. Now I'm thinking of doing a contest here. But anyway, it's called Some Sweet. You can get this on the website from SUMSWEET.com, SUMSWEET.com. You can go to the website and you can get the sweetener from there. That's SUMSWEET.com. So I'm thinking of doing a contest here. I'm actually trying to raise my subscribership on YouTube and would like to make it to 500 subscribers. I think once I make it to 500 subscribers, I'm going to have a contest. I'm going to give away maybe $100 to 5 lucky people who can find the mistake that I made in the last 2 broadcasts. That would be the broadcast for this week, the last 2 broadcasts for this week. You can find the mistake that I made. If you subscribe to my channel, you'll be entered into a drawing for $100 once I reach 500 subscribers. So let's see what happens. I think it's kind of fun. But anyway, you can get a hold of the sweetener if you go to the website there. Would like to let us know this is November. This is Diabetes Awareness Month, and we want to acknowledge that. So there are different types of diabetes: type 1, type 2. There's a type 3. There's a new subtype of diabetes, and I think we'll have a discussion maybe next week about those different types of diabetes. Also, just wanted to also let us know that we have a guest coming next Tuesday. It is Chef Wendy Coop, and she's going to be talking to us about ways that we can make delicious, healthy food. Yes, so that's next Tuesday. Just want to let us know that. So happy Friday today, everybody. And coming back up on to the screen there. So anyway, yeah, I think I'm gonna do that contest. I'm gonna go ahead and work on that and get that set up and everything, so I can get my subscribership up over there on YouTube. Now you might be listening to this on the podcast, wherever you listen to your podcast at. We are available there as well, and we're streaming live on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and here on HAPS. All right, so you can see the subject matter for today is fat versus sugar, which causes more health problems. Well, which one causes diabetes? Now I know I've said here the fat doesn't give you fat doesn't have it doesn't really cause a problem. It's not the source of all of the problems, especially as it relates to diabetes and when you have sugar problems. So I want to make sure that I'm not that people aren't walking away from this. Oh yeah, just go eat a whole lot of fat and you'll be fine. No, you won't be fine. Too much of anything is not a good thing. So too much of um, and then there are different types of fat too. So you don't want to eat a lot of saturated fats, and saturated fats are the kinds that you would find in like some in meat products like beef tallow, things like that. You know, like that. If you're eating the fat off of your animal fat, it would tend to be very high be very saturated fat, or fat that we would call like Crisco, hydrogenated fat and things like that. So I don't want us to think to just, hey, yeah, we can just eat all the fat we want. It's not true. But sugar doesn't get a pass either. So, you can't just escape by just eating, saying, well, do what the food industry has done. When they were on the low fat kick of things, so they're saying low fat, what they did was they took in with all they take out the fat and dumped loads of sugar in. Now, we all know that everything should be balanced, right? Balanced. But I want to take a look at some of what the science says here. And as I try, I'm going to make an attempt to share to bring my screens into my view. While I'm working on that, we'll just take a quick break, and I should have my screens up in just a moment.
A change in diet and nutrition as a means of controlling and managing the blood glucose levels in the body is important for diabetic individuals. Also, making wise choices regarding the foods you eat. It simply means that a well-planned and beneficial diabetic diet regime is one that involves limiting the intake of sweets and sugars, and that's where Some Sweet Plus can help. It can help you ensure that your sweet treats don't disturb your general carbohydrate count. Make and enjoy your sweet treats with Some Sweet Plus.
All right, so I think I was able to make it swap pretty good and get my other screens up here. So let's see here. So dietary fat and the development of type 2 diabetes, does it play a role? It can play a role. It can play a role, but when, let me just say this. The reason that I harp on sugar so much is that most of us don't pay attention to the amount of carbs that we're actually consuming and the amount of sugar that we're actually consuming. We really don't pay that any attention. We pay a lot of attention to the fat. In fact, a lot of us don't like, it's not like we're going to sit and eat tons and tons of fat. We don't really like it like that. It might find its way into our food in certain kinds of ways, but we actually don't. I mean, we don't. I mean, a lot of people don't. Well, I don't eat fat. It's like not like I'm just going to sit up and eat a can of lard, right? Or some a large portion of fatty cut meats or foods or whatever. It's not like we actually eat fat like that. Although you can develop a palate for fatty foods and want everything to be like really really fatty. So I know I was saying the other day, get your that you can, like I was talking about the Chipotle bowl that I would get some sour cream put on there and stuff because I'm not trying to avoid fat. No, I'm not trying to avoid fats in that manner like that. I'm not trying to avoid fats, but I'm not eating tons and tons of fat. I don't eat saturated fat. I don't eat meat with fat and things like that. I know that they say that one of the best steaks is a very fat rich cut of steak called like the Wagyu steak or whatever. Like that's really, it's really fat. But so let's make sure, let's look at the fat and the different types of fat, because there are different, and just like with sugar, with just like with fat, there are different types. There are different types of sugar. So when we talk about saturated fat, let's see where you get it, because I had said that, because like I just told us that you would get it with your really fatty cuts of meat, but um, and what is saturated fat? So saturated fat is the fat that's solid at room temperature. And remember, I said like the lard and the fat on meat that's solid at room temperature. So that's what we call a saturated fat. Um, it's solid fat, right? So it does come from animal foods. It's in milk, it's in cheese, it's in meat, it's in poultry, and but poultry and fish have less saturated fat than the red meat. Okay, and I'm not a red meat eater, so if I was saying, so when I said that, put your sour cream on there, I'm not a red meat eater. I'm not gonna eat. I don't eat red meat, right? So I think I told it, maybe shared with us the reason why. But I don't want people to think that. Remember, everybody's diet. We're all individuals, and all of our diets are different, albeit close to the same, because we're all going to eat food, right? But I don't want, if you eat a diet that's mostly heavy with the animal red meat products, you want to make sure and watch your fat intake, because you don't want to be a diet heavy in saturated fats. Now, there are good fats, because I was saying get the avocado because it's rich in omega-3 fatty acids. Those are good fats. And so that's what we want to get enough of in our diet. Saturated fats can also be found in tropical oils like coconut oil and palm oil and cocoa butter, right? Cocoa butter is like really, really solid at room temperature. I mean, it's it's really hard. So I just want us to know that, and it's not like we really just sit there and eat a lot of those. But although, see, here comes the rub. If you take some of that, if you take that saturated fat, let's see, which one would we probably use? Cocoa butter, palm oil, coconut oil, right? We're calling them oils, but when they're really thick, or the milk. It was like, I'm trying to say, which one would we use? And we mix that with sugar. Now we've just created like a really bad combination of things. So the saturated fats that we want to avoid are the fatty cuts of beef, pork, and lamb. Although when you're doing keto, they encourage you to eat more fat. But really on keto, they encourage you to eat a lot of butter. But dark chicken meat and poultry skin, that's saturated fat that you want to avoid. High fat dairy foods like whole milk, butter, cheese, sour cream, and ice cream. That's heavy whipping cream. Tropical oils like the coconut, palm, and cocoa butter oils, and lard. So those are things you want to avoid. Because those are saturated, they're saturated fats, so you don't want to get a lot of them, but you want to get your good healthy omega-3 fats in. So that's, so I just wanted to make sure that we understood that. While definitely I'm not encouraging you to eat a lot of extra fat. I don't know what your cholesterol levels are like or anything like that. So I just want to make sure. And no, nobody said anything to me. I'm just checking myself. Okay. All right. Okay. But because I want to make sure that we're balanced here, that everything is balanced, but to also make us very aware of sugar. So what does it look like when so let's look at the different types of sugar. And I think we went over some of this before. All the time we're always talking about sugar. But what are the different types of sugar? And I mean, there are so many. And if I could just bring up my book here, I didn't, I have an ebook that is called Spilling the Tea on Sugar. But, and we could, and in there, I can list it. I have the list of the different names, and let me see if I can just grab that and pull that up here. I won't be able to share it there, but let me see if I can get it up here, and we'll go over the different names of sugar. But there are different, there, just like there are different fats, and fats come from a different short, different sources. There are there's different types of sugar. So I want to bring up that book, and we'll go over listing out what are the different types of sugar, because when you're when you're getting when you're at the store and you're looking at your different products there in the store, and you're looking on the back, and sometimes you might think that you might not you want to see sugar that just says, hey, sugar. But the letters, the way that you can know that something is a sugar or a type of sugar, is you want to look for the with the acronym or the three letters on the back, or OSE, OSE. And then that will tell you whether or not it is it whether or not there's a sugar in it. But then there's also other types. Well, no, they're not sugars, so I won't call them out, but because those are sweeteners, right? So they're called, I'm gonna say they're called alls, or like polyols or whatever, because that's at the end of when you see a lot of those kinds of things. So let me get this open here. Oh my goodness, when stuff doesn't want to work for you. So we're going to look at the different names of sugar, or the first types of sugar. The first one of the first sugars that we know, that we should all be familiar with, is sucrose. So sucrose. Do you know what sucrose is? Sucrose is table sugar. That's our regular everyday sugar, which is sucrose. And we find sucrose comes from the sugar cane, and it can also be found with beets. So there's beet sugar. So there's different types of that. So and it's regular white granulated confectioner's powder, fruit sugar, super fine, all different kinds of that sugar that we can get. Um, but let's so we're going to look at, and also brown sugar is the sugar that has molasses in it, right? So it's because sugar, when you cook it, caramelizes, has that molasses in it, and white sugar, they extract that out of it. So brown sugar just has the molasses added back into it. So that was the first one. Sucrose is made up of glucose and fructose, or fructose, and is found in plants. So all of these, well, not all of them are going to be found in plants, but a lot of them, or some of them, are found in plants. So the next one, and so that would make it a disaccharide, because it's got two, right? So it's got two parts, and that's common table sugar, right? Then there's fructose, or fructose, however you want to say it, high fructose corn syrup. We know that, right? And it's found in fruits and honey. And then there's your milk sugars, that is lactose. Now, did you know lactose was a sugar? Did you know it? Because we just thought it was something in milk that, just if you are maybe an African American person, that or a person, a melanated person, that tend to have issues digesting lactose, right? And so then a lot of us end up being lactose intolerant. Well, yeah, I'm not lactose intolerant, but a lot of people are lactose intolerant. So, but that is found in milk. and it's made of two parts. It's glucose and galactose. Now, what is galactose? Well, galactose is another form of sugar, and it's found in milk and dairy products. So you see the two parts there. And then there's a sugar that's found in barley, and it's called maltose or maltose. Like malt, barley malt, maltose. So that's barley sugar. And how about another sugar? It's called xylose. And where do you get that from? You're wondering? Xylose. Where do you get xylose from? Well, you get xylose from straw or wood. What's a good example of xylose? Well, what is that? It's one. There's a birch, a sweetener that comes from birch, and it's not very good for dogs. I think it's called xylitol. I think that's what it's called, xylitol. And it's not good for dogs. It's very harmful to dogs. So if you have a dog, you definitely don't want get that to get that sweetener. You don't want that one. But those are some sugars, and you will find that you'll see on the back of products and things like that. But then there's still more sugars. So there's still more sugars that you can find. Um, Yet another sugar would be dextrose, right? That's a sugar derivative. And notice the end of it is OSE. And that's how you know that that is yet another sugar, right? Dextrose. And so we went over them. Let's see, we covered fructose, um, glucose. Fructose comes from fruit, so that we're clear on that. So but it's different from the industrial or the high fructose that comes from corn. That's why it's called high fructose corn syrup. It's fruit is fructose, lactose, maltose, sucrose. We covered xylose, and so those are the forms of sugar. But it has many, many different names when it appears on your packaging, and it may or may not say all of that. It may not come across on your packaging like that. So I have a list of the different names of sugar in the book, Spilling the Tea on Sugar. And so it has a list of all of the different names of sugar and what you would see, or as many as I could gather, and what you will see on the back of your packaging, on the back of your labels on your food. So I have those, and or what you would see on the store shelf. So I have a list of those. But that's just basically, you know, if you find yourself having a hard time getting rid of sugar, there could be a reason why. Because you say, I don't eat sugar, I'm not eating any sugar, but you might be getting it because it's sugar by another name. So if you want to get a hold of that list, drop me message me, or leave a note in the comments. You can always go over to somesweet.com and request the book Spilling the Tea on Sugar, or or the list of the names of sugar, and I'll send that out to you. Okay, so now we're talking about fat versus sugar. Now that we've covered the fats, where you get them, and the sugar, where you can find them, which one is more damaging? Well, or which one causes the most problems? According to science, and it was a very surprising, and my computer's freezing, so hopefully it'll stop. So it was very surprising that this was a study done um, from the Finnish, and that's from Finland, the Finnish. diabetes prevention study, and the diabetes program. So they had a hypothesis that dietary fat would cause the development of type 2 diabetes. And so what they found from that study, and this is back in 2002, what they found from that study was that the consumption of a high fat diet and high intakes of saturated fat are associated with an increased risk of type 2 diabetes. However, this association disappears when they adjust for BMI. So, they also find that frequent consumption of processed meats is associated with an increased risk for diabetes. Does this study alter the recommendations that we make for individuals at risk for diabetes? No, it doesn't. But that's what their study said. A large body of experimental data generated in laboratory animals strongly supports the notion that high fat diets are associated with impaired insulin action. It appears from animal studies that saturated fats, in particular, have the most detrimental effect. Based on this information, along with the risk of high saturated fat intake on cardiovascular disease, professional organizations such as the ADA, American Diabetes Association, and the American Heart Association, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture have made recommendations that Americans aim for a total fat intake of no more than 30% of calories and choose foods that are low in saturated fats. So that's the recommendation, is to choose foods that are low in saturated fat. So the current study adds weight to the longstanding recommendation to restrict total fat and saturated fat. While adjusting for BMI eliminates the effect, this does not mean that dietary fat is not important. So, dietary fat is important, and I told you we've talked about this. Fat is good for our brains. It's good for our brains, and fat is a fuel source. But remember, fat is a fuel source. Okay, it is a fuel source. It is intended to be burned, right? When you take it in, it's intended to be burned. It is a fuel source. So you have to, if you put gas in the car, if you fill up the tank of your car, do you need to fill up the tank again if you haven't burned it off? No, you don't. So fat is a fuel source. So that means that we should not be overeating the fat. When you have fat in your diet, whatever you do, you just don't overeat the fat, overeat on fat, or overindulge on fat. So another study that I just want to bring out the studies here. Another study showed that high fat, and this is from 2016, and so these studies are dating back nearly a century, and they noted a striking finding. If you take young healthy people and split them into two groups, half on a fat-rich diet and half on a carbohydrate-rich diet, we find that within just 2 days, glucose intolerance skyrockets in the fat group, right? So basically what they're saying is that when you're eating a lot of fat, um, leads to higher blood sugar levels. And the reason why that they say that is because what happens with the insulin. So insulin needs it needs to unlock, it needs the cell to unlock and be open to it. And so basically, insulin is the key. It's the key that unlocks the cell, and that lets the glucose in the blood enter into the cells. So remember, so we eat, we have glucose, which is sugar. Remember, OSE, glucose, OSE. We have that in our blood. Insulin scavenges it and then takes it into the cell, right? If and it's a process. So the insulin has a receptor, and it's got to connect. It's activated by an enzyme, but that enzyme can get blocked by fat, right? So it can get blocked by fat. And then that makes so that the insulin isn't working. So, and the blood sugar gets stuck in your bloodstream and it has no place to go. And so you have a constantly high blood sugar. So, I mean, with that being said, we really have to consider the way that we eat. Balance. Balance is the key. Now, if I don't eat a lot of fat, because fats make your food taste good. Remember, these are the things. Fat makes your food taste good. Sugar makes your food taste good, right? The food industries are replacing one for the other. They're taking out the fat and dumping lots of sugar, or taking out the sugar and dumping lots of fat. So that's the problem with the diet that we have, the standard American diet. And when they take out the fat or the sugar or whatever however the food is processed and stripped down, they also take away the fiber. And fiber is a big part of this conversation as well. So what we need to do is we need to have a balanced diet. Foods the way that they came out of nature are perfectly fine, right? They have fat. Well, if we're talking foods, okay, so we're talking fruits and veggies, right? Well, I was gonna say they don't have fat, but we do. We have avocados, right? Avocados have fat and they have fiber. They have some fiber with them, and they have some other, they have everything and protein with them as well. So they have what you need there. So that's a healthy fat source, right? Omega-3s and a healthy fat source that comes from an avocado, because I was going to say that an avocado is a fruit. So I was going to say, well, fruits and veggies don't have fat, but yes, they do, because an avocado does. Nuts, they have there are fats in nuts that is naturally occurring. So see how nature just creates things; it creates it for us. Now, I'm not saying don't eat meat. I am not saying that, because hey, if you like a hamburger or whatever. But remember, get lean cuts of meat. You don't want the saturated fats, right? You don't want lots of saturated fats there. And I'm not saying to not eat butter. I'm not vegan, so I'm not saying don't eat butter. For those of you who are, who are vegan, I'm sorry, but I'm not saying don't eat butter, but don't eat a whole stick of butter. Don't eat a whole stick of butter. I say that as I look and think, I sure do love like 4 little pats. If I have a little something that like I put a pat here, a pat here, and a pat here, that's like 4 little pats. But don't eat a whole stick of butter. You know, um, if you, it's moderation, right? So you have to eat in balanced diet. Get your fiber in, get your make sure that you're hitting all of your macronutrients. You want your carbohydrates, your protein, and your fat. You want to hit your macronutrients, because remember, carbohydrate, which is where sugar comes from, is a macronutrient, and fat is a micronutrient. So you want your fats, your proteins, and your carbs. You want them to be in balance. balance. I was going to say imbalance. No, you want them in balance. All right. So, can too much fat make you sick? Yes, it can. Too much of anything can cause a problem in your body. And remember, we're all different, and we want to be in tune with our body. We want to know what triggers our body, what causes problems in our body, what causes inflammation in our bodies. Um, Pay attention to what you eat and how you feel after you eat that. Do you feel energized, or do you feel like you just got your butt kicked? Which one? How do you feel after you ate something? If it doesn't give you energy, it's robbing you of energy. And remember, 16 ounces, 4 of these a day. 4, because this is 16. This gives you 64 ounces. This is 8-ounce glasses when you drink 4 of these a day. Plenty of this every day. You need water. You need water, not sodas. Water, not juice. Water. All right? Are we good? We're good? Yes. Well, I'm happy. I'm glad you joined me today. If you have questions about this or anything else, go ahead. Leave me a comment in the notes. Wherever you find me, wherever you find this broadcast on social media, I hope that all made sense to us all. And thank you so much for joining me today. Until next time. Well, that's it for today's broadcast. Want to thank you all for tuning in. Go ahead and give us a thumbs up if you like this type of content. Also, comment and subscribe to all of our social medias. Peace and blessings.